Picture this. You're planning your future baby's nursery when a cream envelope arrives. Inside, your husband's wedding invitation to marry someone else tomorrow. But here's the twist that shattered everything when she crashed that wedding 8 months pregnant. She didn't know she was walking into a trap that would land her in federal prison. What happens when the victim becomes the accused? When a billionaire's perfect con meets a mother's fierce fight for survival? If you've ever trusted the wrong person, this story will shake you. Hit that like button, drop a comment about what you'd do in her situation, and subscribe because this 90-minute journey into betrayal, justice, and redemption will leave you breathless. Let's begin. Harper Brennan stared at the ultrasound screen, watching her fertility specialist's mouth move without hearing the words. Something about scarring, advanced endometriosis, years of silent damage. "I'm sorry, Harper," Dr. Patterson said gently. "Your fallopian tubes are completely blocked. Natural conception isn't possible." Harper gripped the examination table. She was 32 years old. She'd been trying for 2 years, tracking ovulation, cutting caffeine, doing everything right. And now this stranger was telling her that her body had betrayed her in ways she never suspected. "What about IVF?" Harper's voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "We can try, but with this level of scarring, success rates are below 15%. "I'm sorry." Harper walked to her car in a daze. She'd planned to tell Ethan tonight over dinner, surprise him with a romantic setup, maybe light candles, talk about their future as parents. They'd been married 5 years. This was supposed to be their time. She drove through downtown, past the gallery district where she'd built her career, past the coffee shop where she and Ethan had their first date 7 years ago. Everything looked the same, but her entire world had shifted. At home, their modernist house sat quiet in the hills. Ethan's Tesla was gone, probably at the office. He'd been working late for months on some new venture he wouldn't discuss. "When it launches, everything changes," he'd said cryptically. "Trust me." Harper unlocked the door and immediately noticed something wrong. Papers spread across Ethan's usually pristine desk. He never left work visible. She stepped closer. The heading read, "Wilmington Estate Wedding Services, Premium Package Confirmation." Harper's heart stuttered. A wedding. Maybe for his business partner, Marcus. She picked up the portfolio. "Ceremony for Ethan Cross and Sienna Marlowe. Date tomorrow, June 15th. Guest count 300. Rooftop venue. Downtown." The paper slipped from Harper's fingers. Ethan was getting married. Tomorrow. To someone named Sienna Marlowe. Harper's hands shook as she grabbed her laptop, typing the name into social media. The profile loaded a beautiful blonde woman, 29 years old, brand strategist. Recent posts showed luxury vacations, designer clothes, and there 3 weeks ago, a photo of her hand displaying an enormous diamond ring. Caption, "He asked, I said yes. Cannot wait to marry my soulmate." Harper scrolled frantically. More photos. Sienna at charity galas wearing dresses Harper recognized from Ethan's credit card bills, the ones he said were for client gifts. Sienna at restaurants Harper had suggested for their anniversary, which Ethan claimed were too busy when she wanted to go. Then Harper saw it, a mirror selfie from 2 months ago. Sienna's hand rested on a visible baby bump. Caption, 20 weeks today, baby cross coming soon. Harper ran to the bathroom and vomited. When she could breathe again, she checked their bank accounts. The joint savings $200,000 showed a balance of $1,200. Their investment accounts emptied last month. She logged into the property records. Their house, Ethan had refinanced it solely in his name 6 weeks ago, taking out all the equity. Harper called Ethan, straight to voicemail. She called again. Again. On the 5th try, he answered. "Harper, I'm in a meeting. You're getting married tomorrow." Silence. "Then how did you find out?" How did I, Ethan? What is happening?" His voice was cold, clinical. "The marriage has been over for years, Harper. You were too focused on your career to notice. I tried to tell you, but you never listened. Sienna gives me what you couldn't, a family. Emotional support. A real partnership. I just found out today I can't have children naturally. I was coming home to tell you. That's not my problem anymore. My lawyer will contact you about the divorce." "Divorce, Ethan? We're married. You can't just marry someone else. Check your email. The divorce was finalized 6 months ago. The line went dead. Harper's email loaded. There it was, a legal notice dated December 15th. Final decree of divorce, Cross versus Brennan. But Harper had never received divorce papers, never signed anything, never appeared in court. She was reading the signature line when her phone rang. An unknown number. Is this Harper Brennan? This is Grayson Properties. We need to discuss your gallery lease. I'm afraid we won't be renewing. The building has been sold. Sold to whom? A company called Marlowe Investments. They're taking possession next month. Harper hung up and searched public records. Marlowe Investments. Sole owner Sienna Marlowe. Everything was collapsing at once. Harper sat on her kitchen floor, surrounded by papers, trying to breathe. She'd lost count of how many panic attacks she'd had since yesterday. The infertility diagnosis felt like a lifetime ago, though it had only been 8 hours. Her phone showed 37 missed calls from her assistant at the gallery, 16 texts from friends asking if the rumors were true, and one voicemail from a number she recognized immediately. Harper, it's Dad. I saw something online. Call me. Dale Brennan answered on the first ring. What the hell is going on? Harper started crying. Dad, I need help. I'm 20 minutes away. When Dale arrived, he wasn't alone. Juliet Reeves, Harper's friend from college who'd become a divorce attorney, came through the door carrying a briefcase and coffee. Your dad called me, Juliet said. Harper, I need you to tell me everything. Harper showed them the wedding portfolio, the divorce decree, the bank statements. Dale's face darkened as he read. He'd spent 30 years with the FBI before retiring, and Harper watched him slip into investigator mode. This signature isn't yours, Dale said, holding up the divorce papers. What? Look at the loop in the esquire. You've signed your name the same way since high school. Loop, upward slant. This is loose. Downward. Someone forged this. Juliet examined the document. The notary stamp looks legitimate, but if you never appeared, never signed anything, this divorce is invalid. Harper, you're still legally married to Ethan. Hope flickered in Harper's chest. So the wedding tomorrow is bigamy. Juliet finished. A felony. We can stop this. Dale pulled out his phone. I'm calling in favors. We'll get an emergency injunction from Judge Morrison. He owes me. We'll have police at that wedding tomorrow. Ethan will be arrested the moment he says, I do. For the first time in 24 hours, Harper felt a surge of power. She wasn't helpless. She wasn't the victim of some elaborate... She had resources, connections, and the law on her side. I want to be there, Harper said. I want to see his face when he realizes I'm not going away quietly. Juliet hesitated. Harper, are you sure it's going to be public? Humiliating for everyone? He humiliated me. He stole my money, forged my signature, got another woman pregnant while I was having miscarriages. I want justice, Dale nodded. Then we fight. They spent the night building the case. Juliet contacted a private investigator named Marcus Stone, who specialized in financial fraud. Within 2 hours, Marcus had traced Ethan's money movements, offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, shell corporations in Delaware, and a suspicious pattern of cash withdrawals matching the dates Sienna posted vacation photos. He's been planning this for at least 18 months. Marcus reported via video call. Maybe longer. The offshore accounts were opened 2 years ago. Harper thought back. 2 years ago, she'd had her first miscarriage. Ethan had held her while she cried, brought her soup, taken time off work, and apparently simultaneously opened secret bank accounts to hide their money. Can we recover the funds? Juliet asked. If we can prove fraud before he moves them again. But Harper, there's something else. Marcus's face was grim on the screen. I did some digging into Sienna Marlowe. Her background doesn't add up. No employment history before 3 years ago. No social media before that. It's like she didn't exist until she met Ethan. What does that mean? Harper asked. It means she might be running a con too, or she's using a fake identity. I need more time to figure out which. Dale checked his watch. The wedding is in 11 hours. We don't have time. Then we focus on the bigamy charge, Juliet said decisively. We get the injunction. We stop the wedding. We arrest Ethan, and then we unravel everything else. Harper tried to sleep but couldn't. At 5 in the morning, she gave up and started getting ready. She chose the navy dress professional, confident, She styled her hair the way she used to for gallery openings, applied makeup carefully. If she was going to confront her husband at his wedding, she'd look like someone who deserved respect. At 8 o'clock, Juliet called. "We got the injunction. Judge Morrison signed it an hour ago. Police will be at the venue by noon. Harper, you did it. We're going to stop this." Harper looked at herself in the mirror. She looked strong. She looked ready. She had no idea how completely wrong everything was about to go. The venue was spectacular. Harper stood across the street, watching luxury cars arrive at the downtown high-rise. The wedding was on the rooftop. She could see the white tent glowing against the afternoon sky. Hear the string quartet even from here. Dale parked nearby in an unmarked car. Police are in position. 2 officers in plainclothes inside, 2 more in the lobby. When Ethan says, "I do," they move in. Juliet reviewed the injunction papers one final time. This is solid. The judge's order is clear. The marriage cannot proceed. Harper's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Think carefully about what you're doing. You'll regret this." "Who has your number?" Dale asked, reading over her shoulder. "I don't know. Maybe Ethan." But when Harper tried calling back, the number was disconnected. At 1:30, Harper crossed the street. The lobby was marble and glass, filled with wedding guests in designer clothes. She recognized faces from Ethan's business world tech executives, venture capitalists, the people who'd been at their wedding 5 years ago and apparently had no problem attending his second one. She walked toward the elevators. That's when security appeared. "Ma'am, can I see your invitation?" "I don't have one. I'm Ethan Cross's wife." The guard's expression didn't change. "Ma'am, you're going to need to leave." "I have a court order." Harper started pulling papers from her bag. "Ma'am, please don't make this difficult." Mighty more security appeared. Harper's heart started racing. "Call the police. I have documentation. We have a restraining order filed this morning against Harper Brennan." The head of security showed his phone screen. "By order of the court, you're not allowed within 500 feet of Ethan Cross or Sienna Marlowe. If you don't leave immediately, we'll have you arrested for violation." Harper's world tilted. "That's impossible. I just got an injunction." "Ma'am, last chance," and Dale appeared at her elbow. "I'm her father, former FBI. Can I see that restraining order?" The guard showed him. Dale's face went pale. "Harper, we need to leave. Now." "But Dad," now, he physically steered her toward the door. Behind her, Harper heard whispers. Saw phones come out. People were filming. Someone laughed. Outside. Dale's hands were shaking. "That restraining order was filed at 6 o'clock this morning, 2 hours before our injunction. It claims you've been harassing Ethan and Sienna for months, sending threatening messages, showing up at their home." "That's insane. I didn't even know Sienna existed until yesterday." Juliet appeared, breathless. "I just got a call from Judge Morrison's clerk. Our injunction has been stayed pending review of the restraining order." "Harper, who's your judge on the RO?" "I don't have a judge. I never thought. Judge Patricia Reynolds issued it. She's known for rubber stamping protection orders. Ethan must have forum shopped. Found the judge who'd sign it fastest." Harper's phone buzzed. Social media notifications. Dozens of them. Someone had posted video of her confrontation with security. The caption read, "Crazy ex-wife crashes billionaire's wedding. Security had to remove her." The video already had 50,000 views. Comments flooded in. "This is so embarrassing for her. Let the man be happy. She looks unhinged. Classic crazy ex behavior." Harper watched herself on the screen, watched how she looked from the outside. Desperate, unstable, the villain. "We need to regroup," Dale said. "Figure out our next move. But the wedding, it's happening right now. We have to stop it." Juliet's phone rang. She answered, listened, then hung up with a stricken expression. "That was the police. They're not moving forward with the arrest. The restraining order creates reasonable doubt about your credibility. They want to wait until forensics examines the forged signature." "How long will that take?" "Weeks, maybe months." Harper looked up at the building. Up there, Ethan was marrying someone else, and there was nothing she could do. They drove to Dale's house in silence. Harper watched the city pass by, numb. Her phone kept buzzing. The video had gone viral. 500,000 views now. Someone had created a meme. Inside. Harper collapsed on the couch while Juliet spread the divorce papers across the dining table, examining every page under a magnifying lamp. The notary is real, Juliet muttered. License checks out. The stamp is legitimate. But I never signed it, Harper insisted. I believe you, but proving it is different. Juliet pulled up records on her laptop. The notary's name is Rachel Torres. She's filed thousands of notarizations. Never had a complaint. According to her records, she personally watched you sign this document at your art gallery on December 12th at 2:15 in the afternoon. Harper searched her calendar app. December 12th. She'd been in New York that day for an art acquisition meeting. Her flight receipts proved it. She couldn't have watched me sign anything. I was in another state. Did anyone else have access to your gallery that day? Harper thought back. My assistant, Jade. But she'd never. Dale pulled up a photo on his phone. Is this Jade? The image showed a young woman with dark hair, similar height and build to Harper. In the right lighting from a distance, they could be mistaken for each other. Call her, Tom, Dale ordered. Right now. Harper dialed. The number was disconnected. When did you last see her? Juliet asked. December 15, 3 days after this document was supposedly signed. She said her mother was sick. She needed to quit immediately. Harper's voice caught. I felt terrible for her. I gave her 2 months severance even though she'd only worked for me 6 months. How did you find her? Dale asked. She applied through the gallery website. Had excellent references from galleries in Boston and Philadelphia. I called them. They all checked out. Dale and Juliet exchanged looks. What? Harper demanded. References can be faked, Dale said quietly, especially if someone's running a sophisticated con. They set up fake businesses, fake phone numbers, have accomplices pose as former employers. The room felt smaller suddenly. Harper thought about Jade's suite, hardworking Jade who always arrived early and stayed late. Jade who'd learned Harper's schedule, her habits, her signature style. Jade who looked enough like her to fool a notary who'd never met Harper before. Ethan hired someone who looked like you, Dale said slowly. Had her work at your gallery for months, learning everything about you. Then she posed as you for the notary. The notary saw a woman matching your description, saw ID, probably a fake, and notarized the signature. By the time anyone questioned it, the imposter was gone. Harper felt sick. That's incredibly elaborate. It's incredibly illegal, Juliet corrected. Identity theft? Fraud. Forgery. But proving it requires finding this fake Jade, and I'm guessing Ethan paid her well to disappear. Harper stood and walked to the window, trying to process. Every interaction with Jade replayed in her mind. The personal questions that seemed like friendly interest. The times Jade had accidentally opened Harper's mail. The day she'd asked to borrow Harper's driver's license to verify her age for a gallery event insurance form. She copied my ID, Harper whispered. I thought she just needed to see it, but she took a picture. I saw her, and she laughed and said it was for their records. I didn't think anything of it. That's how cons work, Dale said gently. They make the violation feel normal. Harper's phone rang. Marcus Stone, the private investigator. Harper, I need you to sit down. I've found something about Ethan's company. I'm already sitting. Cross Technologies has been operating at a loss for 18 months. The last 3 funding rounds were fabricated. The investors don't exist. He's been running a shell game, using new investor money to pay dividends to old investors. That's a Ponzi scheme. Exactly. And your art gallery was the laundering mechanism. Every high-value art sale in the past year, fake transactions between shell companies. The money moved through your business accounts, making it look legitimate. Harper, you signed off on all of it. The room tilted. I signed gallery purchase orders. Ethan said they were normal business transactions. They're federal crimes, and your signature is on every single one. Juliet grabbed the phone. Marcus, how bad is this? FBI bad, securities fraud, wire fraud, money laundering. We're talking 15 to 20 years in federal prison. Harper couldn't breathe. This wasn't just about a divorce. This wasn't about a wedding or a mistress. Ethan had been systematically setting her up to take the fall for financial crimes, while she worried about starting a family. "When will the FBI figure this out?" Dale asked, his voice tight. "They already have," Marcus said grimly. "I found the records because I accessed the same databases they're watching. Someone's been investigating cross-technologies for months. Harper, they're probably building a case against both of you right now." Harper ran to the bathroom and vomited. When she came out, wiping her mouth with a shaking hand, Dale and Juliet were arguing in hushed voices. "She needs to turn herself in," Juliet was saying. "Cooperate. Cut a deal. She didn't do anything wrong. It doesn't matter. Her name is on the documents. Her gallery processed the transactions. Without proof, Ethan manipulated her. She's complicit." Harper sank into a chair, the full weight of her situation crushing down. She'd been worried about the wedding humiliation, about losing her house, about her reputation. She hadn't realized she was facing prison. Harper's phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. "You should have stayed away. Now you lose everything." A knock at the door made them all freeze. Dale checked the security camera, and Harper watched the color drain from his face. "FBI." Two agents stood on the porch, badges visible. Through the window, Harper could see a third agent standing by an unmarked car. "Harper Brennan," the female agent said when Dale opened the door. She was tall, professional, with sharp eyes that had seen too many criminals try to lie. "I'm Special Agent Sarah Torres. We have a warrant for your arrest." The holding cell smelled like disinfectant and despair. Harper sat on the metal bench, still wearing her navy dress, now wrinkled and stained from where she'd scraped her arm on the police car door. They'd read her rights, photographed her, fingerprinted her, charged her with conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, and securities fraud. Bail was set at $2 million money Harper didn't have because Ethan had stolen everything. Through the small window in the cell door, Harper could see other women waiting for processing. Some looked scared, some looked resigned. One woman caught Harper's eye and mouthed, "First time." Harper nodded. The woman gave a sad smile. "It gets easier." But Harper didn't want it to get easier. She wanted to wake up from this nightmare. 2 days ago, her biggest worry was infertility. Now she was facing federal prison. A guard appeared. "Brennan, your lawyer's here." Juliet sat across from her in the consultation room, surrounded by papers. Her eyes were red, she'd been crying. "The charges are serious," Juliet said without preamble. "The prosecution has records showing your gallery processed $38 million in fraudulent transactions over 14 months. They have your signature on approval forms, your business accounts as the conduit, your tax returns claiming the income. Ethan told me they were legitimate art sales to private collectors. I believe you, but proving coercion is almost impossible. The prosecutor is offering a deal, plead guilty to reduce charges, testify against Ethan, serve 5 to 7 years." Harper's voice cracked. 5 to 7 years. If we go to trial and lose, you're looking at 20. Maybe more." Juliet paused. "Harper, there's something else. Ethan and Sienna left the country this morning. Their flight landed in Zurich 2 hours ago. Switzerland has banking secrecy laws and no extradition treaty for financial crimes. They're gone, unless we can prove the charges and get Interpol involved. Yes, and that takes months, sometimes years." Harper dropped her head into her hands. "Where's my dad?" "Making calls. He's trying to leverage old FBI contacts. But Harper, most of them are retired. He doesn't have the pull he used to." A guard knocked. 5 minutes. Juliet lowered her voice. "There's been a development. The viral video from the wedding, it's been viewed 8 million times. You're trending on social media. People are calling you Wedding Crasher Harper, making memes. Your gallery's Yelp page is being bombed with 1-star reviews, calling you a stalker and a criminal." Harper thought about her artists, the people who depended on her gallery for exposure. "They're being hurt because of me. Your reputation in the art world is destroyed. Several galleries have issued statements distancing themselves from you. The museum board asked for your resignation. Everything Harper had built over 10 years, gone in 48 hours. "What do I do?" Harper whispered. "You survive," Juliet said. "1 hour at a time, and we figure out how to prove Ethan set you up." But sitting in that cell, Harper couldn't imagine how. At midnight, a guard brought her to a phone. Dale's voice came through, thick with emotion. Baby girl, we're going to fix this. How, Dad? He's in Switzerland with millions of dollars and I'm in jail facing 20 years. I called in every favor I have. Former colleagues are looking into Ethan's background. Sienna's identity. We'll find something. Harper started crying. I can't do 5 years in prison. Mom needs me. She stopped, her mother, with early onset Alzheimer's, living in a memory care facility that cost $8,000 a month. Dad, the FBI froze my accounts. How are we paying for Mom's care? Silence alone. Dad, the facility called this afternoon. They need payment by the end of the week or they'll have to discharge her. Harper slid down the wall, phone pressed to her ear. Her mother, who didn't always remember Harper's name anymore but lit up when she visited. Her mother, who needed specialized care and couldn't survive in a regular nursing home. We'll figure it out, Dale said, but he sounded defeated. After the call, Harper was moved to a shared cell with 3 other women. One was reading a Bible, another was sleeping. The third, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, said, You're the wedding lady. I saw the video. Harper didn't respond. For what it's worth, my daughter went through something similar. Her husband cleaned out their accounts and disappeared, left her with nothing and 2 kids. The woman paused. She's doing okay now. It took time, but she rebuilt. You will too. Harper wanted to believe that, but lying on the thin mattress, listening to the sounds of the jail settling into night, she couldn't imagine a future beyond this moment. Her phone, which they'd returned temporarily, had one new voicemail from an unknown number. Harper almost deleted it, but something made her listen. Miss Brennan, this is Gwen Cross, Ethan's mother. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I need to speak with you. It's urgent. I have information about my son that can help you. The message included a callback number. Harper stared at the phone. Gwen Cross had never liked her, had made that clear from the beginning. At Harper and Ethan's wedding, Gwen had pulled Harper aside and said, My son gets bored easily. Try to keep him interested. Why would she help now? But Harper was facing 20 years in federal prison. Her mother was about to lose her care facility, and her entire life had been destroyed by Gwen's son. What did she have to lose? Harper called the number. Gwen answered immediately. Come to my house tomorrow morning. 10 o'clock. Come alone. What I have to tell you will change everything. Dale didn't want Harper to go. It's a trap. Gwen Cross is Ethan's mother. She's not on your side. But Juliet had posted bail using her own house as collateral, a gesture Harper would never forget. She was free, at least temporarily. I have to hear what she has to say, Harper said. Dad, I'm out of options. Gwen Cross lived in the old money part of the city, where estates had names instead of addresses. Hawthorne Manor was a Georgian revival mansion surrounded by manicured gardens. The kind of place where wealth was inherited, not earned. A housekeeper answered the door and led Harper through halls lined with oil paintings of ancestors. In a sunlit conservatory, Gwen sat in a wingback chair, perfectly composed in pearls and a cashmere sweater set. She was 65 but looked 50, the kind of preservation that came from expensive treatments and no financial stress. Thank you for coming, Gwen said. Tea. I don't want tea. You said you have information. Gwen's expression didn't change. She gestured to the chair across from her. Sit. What I'm about to tell you will be difficult to hear. Harper sat. My son is a monster, Gwen said calmly. And I'm going to help you destroy him. Harper blinked. I don't understand. Ethan isn't my husband's biological son. My late husband, Richard Cross, had an affair 30 years ago with a woman named Catherine Marlowe. That affair produced 2 children, Ethan and a daughter, Sienna. The room seemed to shift. Sienna is Ethan's sister. Half-sister, Catherine raised them together after Richard refused to acknowledge them. When Richard died, he left everything to me and nothing to his illegitimate children. Ethan was 22. He vowed he'd take everything his father denied him. Gwen poured herself tea with steady hands, as if discussing the weather. They've been running this con for 10 years. Ethan marries successful women, slowly moves assets into shell companies. Then Sienna appears as the mistress. They fake a divorce, frame the wife for financial crimes, and disappear with the money. You're the fourth woman. Harper couldn't process this. Fourth, the first wife took her own life after Ethan destroyed her reputation, and she was sentenced to prison. She served 2 years before she died. The second managed to survive her sentence and is now rebuilding in obscurity. The third is in a psychiatric facility, broken by what they did to her. Horror washed over Harper. You knew. You knew what he was doing and you didn't stop him. I didn't know until the third victim. By then, I'd started collecting evidence. Gwen opened a leather portfolio. I have records of every transaction, every shell company, every forged document. I have communications between Ethan and Sienna discussing how to frame you. I have proof the notary was bribed, and I have bank records showing where they've hidden the money. Why are you giving this to me? Gwen's composure cracked slightly. Because I'm dying. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. I have perhaps 3 months, and I will not die knowing I enabled my husband's illegitimate children to destroy innocent women because of his sins. She pushed the portfolio across the table. Everything you need is here. Take it to the FBI. They'll drop your charges and pursue Ethan and Sienna. But Harper, you need to know something else. What? The baby Sienna's carrying isn't Ethan's. It's from a sperm donor. They've used the same con before, fabricate a pregnancy, make the wife feel inadequate, justify the affair. The baby is just another prop. Harper opened the portfolio. Documents spilled out, bank statements, emails, photographs, years of evidence meticulously collected. Why didn't you go to the police yourself? Because Ethan is still my son, on paper at least, and I'm a coward. Gwen's voice was hollow. But you're not a coward. You crashed that wedding despite knowing you'd be humiliated. You're fighting even though they've taken everything. You remind me of who I was before I married into this family and learned to look the other way. Harper looked at this elegant woman in her beautiful house, surrounded by wealth and privilege, dying alone with her secrets. There's one more thing, Gwen said. A trust fund Richard established for Ethan before we knew about the affair. $50 million that Ethan doesn't know exists because it was in a blind trust until Richard's death. I'm the executor. I'm transferring it to you. I can't accept. You can and you will. Use it to rebuild your life. Pay for your mother's care. Help the other women Ethan destroyed. Consider it restitution from the Cross family for what we've taken from you. Harper's hands shook as she held the documents. This was justice, evidence, a future. One condition, Gwen added. When this is over, when Ethan and Sienna are in prison, I want you to visit me. I want to know that I did one good thing before I die. Harper met her eyes. I'll come. Then take this and go. My lawyer will contact you about the trust fund. The FBI will be very interested in what you have to show them. Harper stood, clutching the portfolio like a lifeline. At the door, she turned back. Why did he marry me if this was all a con? Why choose me? Gwen's smile was sad. Because you were kind. Successful. Trusting. Everything Ethan pretends to value and actually despises. You were the perfect victim. Special Agent Sarah Torres looked skeptical when Harper appeared at the FBI field office with Dale and Juliet. Miss Brennan, you're out on bail. You shouldn't be. I have evidence, Harper said, placing Gwen's portfolio on the desk. Evidence that Ethan Cross and Sienna Marlowe have been running a decade-long fraud scheme targeting multiple women. Torres opened the portfolio. Her expression changed as she read. Where did you get this? Ethan's mother. She's been collecting evidence for years. Torres called in her supervisor, then another agent. Within an hour, Harper was in a conference room with 6 federal agents watching her story unfold across whiteboards and laptop screens. This corroborates our investigation, Torres admitted. We've been tracking Cross Technologies for 8 months, but we thought you were a willing participant. I was his victim, Harper said firmly. Just like the 3 women before me. They spent 6 hours going through every document. The agents verified bank accounts, traced shell companies, confirmed the pattern. Harper watched them work, feeling something she hadn't felt in days, hope mixed with vindication. Agent Torres pulled up a file on her laptop. We've been looking for connections between these shell companies for months. This, she gestured at Gwen's documents, fills in every gap. The offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands match suspicious wire transfers we flagged last year. The LLC formations in Delaware correspond with dummy investor payments. Miss Brennan, your mother-in-law just handed us a prosecutable case. Former mother-in-law, Harper corrected quietly. Torres's supervisor, a gray-haired man named Richards, leaned back in his chair. The forensics on your gallery assistant, the woman calling herself Jade Monroe, we've been trying to identify her for weeks. According to these emails between Ethan and Sienna, her real name is Crystal Vance. She's worked with them on at least 2 previous cons. Can you find her? Dale asked. With this information, absolutely. Richards made a call, spoke in rapid-fire law enforcement shorthand, then hung up. We're issuing a warrant. If she's still in the country, we'll have her within 48 hours. By evening, Torres made a call to the prosecutor. We're dropping all charges against Harper Brennan, she announced, and issuing warrants for Ethan Cross and Sienna Marlowe. Relief flooded through Harper so intensely she nearly collapsed. Juliet steadied her with a hand on her shoulder. What about extradition? Dale asked. They're in Switzerland. Switzerland cooperates on fraud cases when evidence is this clear, Torres explained. It'll take time, but we'll get them back. The Swiss Federal Office of Justice doesn't protect financial criminals when we can prove the crimes were committed on U.S. soil. How long? Harper's voice was barely a whisper. 3 to 6 months, typically. Could be faster with a case this solid. Torres looked at Harper with something approaching respect. Miss Brennan, what your mother-in-law gave us is extraordinary. Most fraud investigations take years to build. She did it in secret while the perpetrators lived under her roof. That takes courage. Marcus Stone, who'd been working with the FBI team, pulled Harper aside. There's more. I tracked down the other victims. The second wife, Jennifer Parker. She's willing to testify. The third wife is too traumatized, but her medical records from the psychiatric facility show clear evidence of what Ethan did to her psychologically. What about the first wife? Harper asked quietly. Amy Sullivan. She died in prison 3 years ago. Suicide. Marcus's voice was gentle. But her family is willing to provide victim impact statements. Her sister, Margaret, wants to speak with you. Harper thought about Amy Sullivan, a woman she'd never met but whose fate she'd almost shared. A woman who'd been too broken, too isolated, too convinced she deserved prison to keep fighting. I want to help her family. Once the trust fund is transferred, I want to set up something for them, and a scholarship, maybe, or a memorial fund. They'd appreciate that, Marcus said. Margaret told me Amy was an artist too, painted watercolors. After Ethan destroyed her gallery career, she stopped creating entirely. Margaret still has boxes of her paintings in storage. Harper's throat tightened. She understood that loss, the death of the creative self alongside everything else. Over the next 3 months, the case built momentum. Interpol got involved. Swiss authorities froze Ethan and Sienna's accounts. The FBI arrested Crystal Vance in Miami, and she immediately cooperated in exchange for a reduced sentence, providing even more evidence of the conspiracy. Media coverage shifted dramatically. Journalists who'd mocked Harper as wedding crasher now investigated the broader story of how a brother-sister con team had destroyed multiple women's lives over a decade. An investigative reporter from a major newspaper called Harper. I'm doing a deep dive into financial abuse in relationships. Would you be willing to talk? Harper agreed. On one condition, I want you to focus on the pattern, not just my story. Talk to Jennifer. Talk to Amy's family. Show people this isn't isolated, it's systematic. The resulting article, The Con Artist's Wife: How Financial Predators Hide in Plain Sight, went viral. It detailed each victim's story, the sophisticated methods Ethan and Sienna used, and the systemic failures that allowed them to operate for years. The viral video took on new meaning. People watched it again and saw not a crazy ex-wife, but a woman trying to stop a crime in progress. The comments changed. This is heartbreaking. She was trying to expose him. How did we all get this so wrong? She's incredibly brave for showing up there. We owe her an apology. Harper gave one carefully managed interview with a sympathetic journalist. She sat in a neutral studio, wearing professional clothes, and told her story calmly: the fake divorce, the financial fraud, the systematic destruction of her life. What do you want people to know? The journalist asked. That financial abuse is real and sophisticated. That con artists are often charming, successful people who know exactly how to exploit trust. and that sometimes the person you love most is the one hurting you the most. Harper paused. I want other women to see the warning signs I missed. I want them to know that even when it feels like you've lost everything, you can rebuild. But more than anything, I want them to know they're not alone and they're not crazy. What would you say to women currently in situations like yours? Document everything. Trust your instincts. And don't be afraid to ask for help, even when you think no one will believe you. Someone will. The interview was shared across social media platforms, viewed millions of times. It sparked conversations about coercive control, financial manipulation, and how society dismisses women's accusations until it's too late. 6 months after that terrible day at the fertility clinic, Harper stood in a federal courthouse watching Ethan and Sienna extradited and in custody face a judge. Ethan looked smaller than she remembered. Prison clothes didn't suit him. His confidence was gone, replaced by the hunched posture of someone who finally understood they'd been caught. Sienna cried throughout the hearing, maintaining she'd been manipulated by Ethan. Her lawyer argued she was a victim too, controlled by her older half-brother. But the evidence showed otherwise. She'd initiated contact with previous victims, crafted the fake personas, managed the offshore accounts. She'd been an equal partner in destruction. The judge set trial dates. Federal prosecutors estimated sentences of 15 to 20 years each if convicted. Dale squeezed Harper's hand as they left the courthouse. It's not over, but we're close. Harper nodded. Justice was coming, slowly, bureaucratically, but coming nonetheless. Outside, reporters waited. Harper paused, straightened her shoulders, and spoke directly to the cameras. Today is about accountability, but it's also about the women who didn't survive this, like Amy Sullivan, and the women who are still rebuilding, like Jennifer Parker. I'm fighting for all of us. The trust fund transferred on a gray morning in October. Harper sat in a lawyer's office, watching $50 million appear in a new account, an amount of money that felt surreal after months of having nothing. What will you do with it? Juliet asked. Harper had already decided. First, pay you back for posting bail with your house. Second, set up permanent funding for mom's memory care. Third, establish a foundation to help women escaping financial abuse. She thought of Amy Sullivan, who hadn't survived, of the woman in her holding cell who'd said, "It gets easier," of all the women who'd faced similar situations and need support. The rest I'm splitting between the victims of Ethan's investment fraud. They lost their savings trusting him. They deserve restitution. Over the next months, Harper threw herself into building what would become the Harper Brennan Foundation for Financial Justice. She hired trauma counselors, legal advocates, and financial advisors. She partnered with domestic violence organizations. She created comprehensive resources for women who'd been systematically robbed by intimate partners. The work was harder than she'd anticipated. She interviewed dozens of potential staff members, looking for people who understood trauma from the inside. She hired a woman named Lisa who'd survived economic abuse from her ex-husband and now had a master's degree in social work. She brought on David, a financial advisor whose sister had lost everything to a con artist and who now specialized in asset recovery for abuse survivors. The foundation's headquarters was in Harper's new gallery space, smaller than before. But hers, she curated exhibitions by artists who'd survived economic hardship. She hosted workshops on financial literacy and recognizing manipulation. One wall was dedicated to Amy Sullivan's watercolors, which Margaret had donated to the foundation. Amy would have loved this, Margaret said at the dedication ceremony, tears in her eyes. She always said art could heal anything. Marcus Stone joined as the foundation's investigator, helping women gather evidence against abusive partners. Juliet provided pro bono legal services, building a team of attorneys willing to take cases on contingency. Even Dale came out of retirement to train staff on documentation and evidence collection. But the work was emotionally devastating in ways Harper hadn't anticipated. Every intake interview meant hearing another version of her story, women whose partners had stolen, manipulated, destroyed, women who'd lost homes, businesses, children, women who believed they were crazy until someone validated their experience. One woman, Maria, came in with a story almost identical to Harper's. Her husband had forged divorce papers, moved money offshore, framed her for financial crimes she didn't commit. "I thought I was the only one," Maria whispered during her first session, I thought I was so stupid for not seeing it. You're not stupid, Harper said firmly. You're human, and what happened to you is a crime, not a failure. But some days Harper couldn't maintain that professional distance. Some days she came home from the foundation and couldn't stop crying. Some days the panic attacks returned so intensely she had to cancel meetings and hide in her apartment with the lights off. She'd wake up at 3 in the morning, heart racing, convinced the FBI was coming to arrest her again. She'd check her bank balance obsessively, terrified the money would disappear. She'd avoid restaurants she'd been to with Ethan, galleries where they'd socialized, entire neighborhoods that held memories. You need therapy, Dale said gently after finding her crying in her office at 2 in the morning, surrounded by case files. I don't have time. You don't have time not to. Baby girl, you survived something terrible. But surviving isn't the same as healing. You can't help others if you're drowning yourself. Harper started seeing Dr. Ellis, a trauma specialist who'd worked with abuse survivors for 20 years. The therapy was excruciating, excavating every moment of her marriage, identifying patterns of control she'd normalized, grieving the future she'd imagined. You're describing post-traumatic stress, Dr. Ellis explained during their third session. Your body is still in survival mode even though the threat is gone. We need to teach your nervous system that you're safe now. But Harper didn't feel safe. She jumped at unexpected sounds. She couldn't watch romantic movies without feeling anxious. She had nightmares about court papers and restraining orders. She couldn't trust her own judgment anymore if she'd been so wrong about Ethan. How could she trust herself about anything? That's part of the trauma, Dr. Ellis said. He didn't just steal your money and your reputation. He stole your confidence in your own perceptions. That's what coercive control does. The therapy included EMDR for the traumatic memories, cognitive behavioral work for the anxiety, and group sessions with other survivors. Slowly, painfully, Harper began to separate Ethan's lies from her own reality. A year after Ethan's arrest, the trial began. Harper testified for 6 hours, walking the jury through every forged document, every manipulated transaction, every lie. She remained calm, factual, letting the evidence speak. Ethan's lawyer tried to paint her as a vengeful ex-wife fabricating evidence, but when he suggested she'd known about the fraud all along, Harper looked directly at the jury. I signed papers without reading them because I trusted my husband. That was naive, but it wasn't criminal. What was criminal is that he systematically exploited that trust to frame me for crimes he committed, and he would have let me go to prison for 20 years while he lived on stolen money in Europe. The courtroom was silent. Jennifer Parker testified too, describing how Ethan had destroyed her business and her mental health. Margaret Sullivan testified about finding her sister Amy dead in her cell, holding a sketch of the gallery she'd once owned. The jury deliberated for 3 days, guilty on all counts. Ethan was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. Sienna got 15. Harper expected to feel triumph. Instead, she felt empty. The sentencing didn't undo the trauma. It didn't restore the time lost. It didn't bring Amy Sullivan back or heal Jennifer's scars or erase the months Harper had spent terrified she'd die in prison. Justice isn't closure, Juliet said afterward, walking Harper to her car through a crowd of reporters. It's just one piece of healing. Harper nodded, understanding now that healing would be years of work, not one courtroom victory. 2 years after the wedding that wasn't, Harper visited Gwen Cross in hospice. The cancer had taken everything: her hair, her weight, her elegant composure. But her eyes were still sharp when Harper entered the room. You came, Gwen whispered. I promised I would. Harper showed her photos of the foundation, told her about the women they'd helped, explained how the trust fund was being used. You did something good, Harper said. You broke the cycle. Gwen's eyes filled with tears. Thank you for telling me that. She died 3 days later. Harper attended the small funeral, standing in the back. She'd never thought she'd mourn a Cross family member. But Gwen had made a choice, however late, to stop enabling evil. That meant something. 3 years after the fertility clinic appointment that had started everything, Harper stood in her mother's memory care room, helping her get ready for lunch. Do I know you? Her mother asked, studying Harper's face with confusion. I'm Harper, your daughter. Harper. Her mother tested the word. That's a pretty name. Most days were like this now. but occasionally her mother had clear moments. Last week, she'd looked at Harper and said, "You seem sad, sweetheart." "What's wrong?" Harper had cried then, grateful to be seen by her mother one more time. The memory care facility was excellent and now permanently funded. Harper visited 3 times a week, bringing flowers and reading aloud from her mother's favorite books. "Your mother is lucky to have you," one of the nurses said. Harper wasn't sure about that, but she was learning that showing up was sometimes the only thing you could do. At the foundation, they'd helped 243 women in 3 years. Some reunited with their money, some got their children back, some simply got safe. Harper met with each one personally, sharing her story, listening to theirs. "You make them feel less alone," Marcus observed. "That matters more than the financial support." Harper had been alone for a long time after Ethan. Dating felt impossible. How could she trust anyone after missing so many red flags? Friends had drifted away during the trial. The art world remained wary, but slowly, carefully, she was building something new. She reconnected with college friends who remembered her before Ethan. She joined a support group for survivors of financial abuse. She started painting again, something she'd given up when marriage and gallery management consumed her time. Her paintings were dark but honest, fractured portraits, shattered spaces. One piece called "After the Wedding" showed a woman in a navy dress standing in an empty room. The painting sold immediately. A gallery in New York wanted to represent her. "You're really talented," the gallerist said. "Have you considered a full show?" Harper had considered it, but the idea of being that visible again, that vulnerable, felt terrifying. Dr. Ellis pushed gently. "What's the worst that could happen? People could hate my work. Critics could call me a publicity seeker, using my trauma for attention. And the best that could happen." Harper thought about that. Maybe other survivors would see it and feel less alone. 6 months later, Fractured Foundations Art from Survival opened at the Morrison Gallery. Harper's paintings hung alongside work by other women who'd survived intimate partner violence. The opening night was packed. A woman approached Harper, mid-30s, nervous. "Thank you for this. My ex-husband did something similar, not as extreme, but similar. I felt so stupid for not seeing it. Your work makes me feel like maybe I'm not." "You're not," Harper said firmly. "You're not stupid. You're human." They talked for an hour. By the end, the woman was crying but smiling. "I think I'm ready to report him." Harper gave her the foundation's card. "We can help with that." This was why she'd survived. Not for revenge. Not even for justice. But to be here for this moment, helping another woman realize she deserved better. That night, walking home through the city she'd almost left, Harper felt something unfamiliar: contentment. Not happiness that felt too far away still, but contentment. She was alive. She was helping people. She was creating again. Her phone rang. An unknown number. Harper almost didn't answer. Unknown numbers still triggered anxiety, but she'd been working on that with Dr. Ellis. "Hello. Harper Brennan, this is Nathan Reeves. I'm a trauma counselor at Memorial Hospital. I saw your gallery show tonight. Would you be interested in partnering with our domestic violence unit? We need someone who understands what survivors are going through." Harper smiled. "I'd like that." 4 years after everything collapsed, Harper sat in a coffee shop reviewing grant applications for the foundation. They were expanding, opening a second office, hiring more staff. The waiting list of women needing help was 6 months long. "Is this seat taken?" Harper looked up. A man in his late 30s stood there holding a coffee, looking uncertain. He had kind eyes and paint stains on his hands. "It's all yours," Harper said, moving her papers. They worked in companionable silence for 20 minutes before he spoke again. "I recognize you. From the gallery show." Harper's guard went up automatically. "Uh-oh. I'm Nathan. Nathan Reeves. I called you a few months ago about the hospital partnership." Recognition clicked. "Right. We've been coordinating through email. I didn't realize that we'd both like the same overpriced coffee." He smiled. "I come here to write grants. The ambient noise helps me focus." They started talking about the foundation, the hospital's program, the challenges of helping trauma survivors. Nathan understood in a way most people didn't. He'd spent 15 years working with abuse victims and had founded the counseling program at Memorial. Can I ask you something personal? Nathan said eventually. Harper tensed. Maybe. That painting in your show, the one called Empty Rooms, was that your house? Yes. I stood in front of it for 20 minutes. It captured something I've been trying to explain to people for years, how violation isn't just physical, how someone can destroy you without ever raising their hand. Harper looked at this man who understood. That's exactly what I was trying to show. They talked until the coffee shop closed. Then they walked through the city, continuing the conversation. At Harper's building, Nathan paused. Would you want to have dinner sometime as colleagues? Or, he hesitated, or maybe as something else, if you're open to that. Harper's first instinct was to say no. Dating felt impossible. Trust felt impossible. But Dr. Ellis had been pushing her to try, when she was ready, with someone safe. I need you to know some things first, Harper said. I have PTSD. Some days I can't leave my apartment. I don't trust easily. I probably won't for a long time. Okay, Nathan said simply. I'm serious. My last relationship was a disaster that ended with federal court and therapy and… Harper, Nathan's voice was gentle. I work with trauma survivors. I understand what recovery looks like. I'm not expecting perfect. I'm just asking if you'd like to have dinner. Harper took a breath. This was terrifying. But maybe that was okay. Maybe doing scary things was part of healing. Yes, she said. I'd like that. Their first dinner was awkward. Harper had a panic attack halfway through when Nathan reached across the table for the salt and she flinched. But Nathan handled it perfectly, gave her space. Didn't make it weird, just asked if she wanted to leave or stay. Stay, Harper said. I want to stay. They took things slowly, maybe coffee dates that didn't feel like dates, walks through parks. Eventually, carefully, but something that looked like dating. Nathan never pushed. He let Harper set the pace. I like you, Harper told him after their fifth or maybe sixth date. But I don't know if I can do a relationship. I don't know if I can trust, then don't. Nathan said, don't trust me yet. Trust takes time. We'll build it slowly, or we won't build it at all. And either way is okay. 6 months into whatever they were doing, Nathan met Dale. Harper was nervous her father had been protective since Ethan, but Dale and Nathan talked for hours about the foundation, about helping survivors, about sports. At the end of the night, Dale pulled Harper aside. I like him. He sees you. What does that mean? It means he doesn't treat you like you're broken. He treats you like you're healing. There's a difference. Harper thought about that. Nathan had never tried to fix her or save her. He just showed up, consistently, letting her be wherever she was that day. A year after their first coffee shop meeting, Nathan was there when Harper got the news Ethan had died in prison, an altercation with another inmate. He was 42. Harper expected to feel something relief, vindication, closure. Instead, she felt nothing. Ethan had become irrelevant to her life, and even his death didn't change that. Is that wrong? She asked Nathan. That I don't feel anything. No, he took enough from you. He doesn't get your grief too. At the foundation, they established the Amy Chen Memorial Scholarship for women rebuilding their lives after financial abuse. The first recipient was a woman named Maria whose husband had stolen her business, her savings, and her confidence. I don't know how to say thank you, Maria said, tears in her eyes. Pay it forward, Harper told her. When you're rebuilt, help someone else. 5 years after the wedding invitation that had shattered her world, Harper stood in front of a different kind of gathering. The foundation's annual benefit had attracted 200 donors, survivors, and supporters. She was giving the keynote speech. 5 years ago, I thought my life was over, Harper began. I'd lost my marriage, my money, my reputation, my freedom. I'd been betrayed by someone I loved and blamed by people who didn't understand. I spent nights in jail, days in courtrooms, and years in therapy learning how to trust again. She looked out at the audience, saw women she'd helped, saw Nathan, smiling encouragingly, saw Dale and Juliet and Marcus, her team. But here's what I learned: surviving is not enough. We have to rebuild, and rebuilding means accepting help, doing the hard work of healing, and eventually helping others climb out of the same holes we fell into. Harper paused, letting the words settle. I'm not going to tell you I'm fully healed. I still have bad days. I still have nightmares. I still sometimes check my bank balance compulsively or flinch when someone moves too quickly. But I'm here. I'm helping people. I'm creating. I'm learning to trust again. And some days that feels like victory. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, a young woman approached Harper. I just left my husband. He controlled all our money and I have nothing. I'm terrified. Harper took her hands. You're going to be okay. It won't be easy, but you're going to be okay. And you're not alone. She handed the woman the foundation's information packet, including emergency housing contacts, legal resources, and counseling referrals. Call us tomorrow. We'll help you figure out next steps. The woman left crying but smiling. Nathan appeared at Harper's elbow. You're amazing. You know that. I'm a work in progress. We all are, Nathan said. That's the point. Walking home that night, Harper thought about the woman she'd been 5 years ago. The one who signed papers without reading them. The one who trusted completely. The one who thought love meant never questioning. She didn't miss that woman. That woman had been naive. Sheltered by privilege she hadn't recognized. This woman scarred. Cautious. Still healing is stronger. She'd survived the worst things she could imagine and built something meaningful from the wreckage. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. Proud of you. Coffee tomorrow. Harper smiled and texted back, yes. Tomorrow she'd have coffee with someone who treated her with respect. Tomorrow she'd meet with 3 new foundation applicants. Tomorrow she'd visit her mother, who might not remember her name but would feel her love anyway. Tomorrow wouldn't erase the past, but it would be hers, built on her terms, guided by her choices. And after everything she'd lost and served and rebuilt, that felt like enough. Harper Brennan walked home through the city she'd reclaimed, no longer the woman who'd received that wedding invitation, but not entirely separate from her either. She was both the naive wife and the cautious survivor, the victim and the advocate, the broken woman and the healing one. She was, finally and imperfectly, herself, and that was the real victory.